What's up, ADOS friends, family, and allies? How y'all doing? You know who it is. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the Friends of ADOS TV channel, bringing you those ADOS hot topics and making the case for the Super PAC, for reparations, and for the COVID-19 relief family. And hello, the Reparations March family. Oh yes, we coming to DC. Yes, we are. COVID and all, right? We got to get this done, family. We got to put the narrative back on reparations and the ADOS agenda. Yes, because far too often, family, people want to deal with effect and not cause. But we got something for that. Follow this, start your watch parties. I'm going to do the same. Thank you for joining the live. I don't.
Little?
Click on this. See, it's not even over here. Maybe it's because. Thank you, Shannon Glover. I can't even get to my own show in my own feed. This is crazy. Facebook is forever trying to censor me. Look, they keep blocking it. They keep blocking me, family. I'm trying to start this live watch party. Follow in, start your watch parties. Please share it. Start your watch parties because Facebook is trying to prevent me from doing watch parties of these shows. But you know the show must go on, right, family? This is crazy.
You can change your public status.
I have totally public. Everything is public. This is what they do. Oh my goodness. Let me try.
Go back to that one that you showed me. That's a pack, right?
I know. I shared it on the PAC page. I'm hoping it shows up there so I can share it and get it going. Thank you, Harrison Matthew. I don't know. It's just when I'm trying to look at my content in my feed so I can start a live watch party, it's telling me the content isn't available. So I might not be able to do the live watch party. I may just have to wait on that. I'll let Marlon tinker with it. If we can't get that going, I'll share it after we record. We got a lot to talk about, family. You know, it's hot in these ADOS streets, right? We're going to dig into it. We got people thinking that the Friends of ADOS PAC are grifters. They kind of think that we are working for the Democratic Party. What else? Donald Trump is up to his antics, disrespecting everyone that built this country, especially American descendants of chattel slavery, right, family? Oh, yeah. He is sitting up here talking about Black Lives Matter on the walkway in front of the Capitol is a denigration to the country. When we built all this wealth you see around you, right? It's really something else out there. What's up, Andrea Michelle? Thank you for joining the live. Thank you all for joining the live. Like I mentioned, I'm having challenges with starting a watch party, so we're going to work with the company that's here over at the Friends of ADOS TV. So if you are trying to watch us as part of the watch party, I'm going to share that a little later because we've got way too many topics and we got to really dig into this so that we're not all day with it. Okay, family? But anyway, I just wanted to talk about some of the hot topics concerning us, some of the rumors on the street. Oh, let's see. Harrison said there's a Facebook algorithm that can hear music and block the feed. Well, that's never happened to me before. When I go live, I use BeLive app, and that's how I sync to Facebook to go live in the Facebook space. And that tends to allow me to start the watch parties, which gets like a ton of people who may not have the notification, but that's neither here nor there. We will do it later. Preferably, it'll allow me to share the finish link. But anyway, there's a lot to talk about. Don't worry about it.
Okay, keep going.
Well, it's time for you to jump in. So let's just leave that part alone. I just wanted to talk with you guys about a little bit more about the PAC, right? Because there seems to be some type of rumor out there. I hear that it's in the Twitter spaces. I'm not really a tweeter. I usually am on Facebook more often than not. And we've got people sharing with me that there's this perception out there that the ADOS Super PAC are grifters. And so I'm just going to be sharing every show about how solid a strategy, right, that the Friends of ADOS Super PAC truly is. And Marlon is here to help me make the case with the real clear ADOS politics. And just to, I don't want to say damage control because it's not damaging us anyway. But I do want to always stress the importance of the moment, right, that we're in right now. Basically, we're fighting for reparations and a Black agenda. Those reparations are specifically for American descendants of chattel slavery here. We don't begrudge anyone else in their fights over in the Caribbean. They have CARICOM and things of this nature. But if we're not careful and we don't put a gate up around our reparations, what generally happens to us is that they'll give with one hand and give away with the other to all the other groups, right? Because you got white folks now saying that they're American descendants of slavery due to indentured servitude, which is not chattel slavery. We even have recently AOC. AOC is talking about the Afro-Latinas. She is, in my humble opinion, trying to make the case. Everybody wants to kind of crowbar what we have started as the ADOS movement. Now, I'm not disparaging groups that came before us, but you have to understand, we've been putting in work since around 2014 with Yvette Carnell. And we are the ones making noise in the Twitters, in the Instagram, in the Facebook, demanding reparations and a Black agenda. So much so that the national news feeds check in on what we do, and then they kind of quasi support or they dog us out for it. But we are the sole reason that this has become a national debate stage topic. Something that everybody's considering. Everybody else is trying to crowbar what we have spent years establishing underground, not even underground really, but through the YouTube spaces, right? We've been in social media doing this work. And so AOC recently talked about the Afro-Latinos, and we're going to get into all of that. But first, I want to deal with these kind of misnomers about who we are as the Friends of ADOS PAC. And I want Marlon to jump in while I get my fan, y'all. I'm very hot. I want him to jump in and share with you who we really are, how we are governed by the FEC. He's the CEO. This is kind of his brainchild. And then I partnered with him to bring this into fruition a year ago this month. So this isn't a new idea. This is real serious strategy that is going to help us get more people like Jecorey Arthurs, who just won his city council race. Congratulations, Jecorey. It's going to get more ADOS who are full-chested about our reparations and Black agenda in Congress. That's where we're headed. We want it, yes, at every level of government, right? Because the Jecorey Arthurs city councilman in Louisville, Kentucky, where Breonna Taylor was executed in her home. This is a great start. He is the type of person that would one day aspire to a U.S. Senate seat. So that is why the PAC was established, to give us a strategy beyond Democratic down ballot, which does not work, okay? When you're 13 out of 100, and not all 100% of us vote, we're 13% of the population. White folks are, what, 68%?
68, but 72% of the voters.
Right. So we don't have the numbers, and we've got to understand that we must put a solid strategy in place because we don't have the numbers to make a Democratic down ballot strategy work. Now, I know Yvette, that's what she's pushing. I disagree with that after much education with my partner, Marlon Aldridge. So I want him to share and tackle this question while I get my fam. Is the Friends of ADOS Super PAC grifting? In other words, trying to get the bag off of poor ADOS. Take it away, Marlon.
Right. Good afternoon. ADOS. On the question of, is Friends of ADOS PAC a grifter? That's a new term to me. You guys know more than I do about that. I'll just stick with the specifics. Friends of ADOS PAC was licensed in the state of Ohio last year. So we are licensed to conduct business in the state of Ohio as a nonprofit for liability purposes. Okay. We are also authorized under the Federal Elections Committee as a political action committee. Okay. So we report to the Federal Elections Committees. You can look our reports up on their website. We are required to stay in compliance with the Federal Elections Commission Act. And we are also governed by a board of directors. So what does that all mean? That means that we are liable before the state of Ohio. We are liable before the Federal Elections Commission, that's the federal government, and we are liable before a board of directors. Okay, so this is the difference, these are just three of the differences that differentiate us from other organizations who are not set up in that particular fashion. Okay, there are state, federal, and local ordinances that we have to comply with. Okay, our purpose is to raise money to help people, our candidates, finance their campaigns. Okay, we're still in the development phase, trying to make sure that we have the best operations in place. We have some policies that make sense. We are a democratic organization.
Can you say that again?
We are a democratic organization. That means that you determines who you are going to vote for, okay? That means that you determine who you are going to vote for. Now, having said that, it is important for you to understand that the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party is the most viable party for ADOS. There is no question about that. You could bring your best trained, you can bring your best educated, you could bring your most experienced, and I will tear them apart if anyone says anything different. All you have to do is look at the politics. Okay, this is very easy even for a non-degreed person to do. If you have the ability to reason in any kind of way, you can validate what we are saying. We live in a two-party system, okay? That is a fact. That is the hand that we have been dealt. There is no question about that. If you look inside of Congress, you will see mostly Democrats or Republicans. You will see one independent, and you will probably see one libertarian, okay? Those independents will normally caucus with the Democrats, okay? There are no other parties. For those of you out there that are considering or talking about a third party, well, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have been around since the 1800s, and we have two parties today. We've had more parties than that, but it is very evident that if only two parties exist, I'm talking about in Congress, that is the way that the system has been set up, as a two-party system as opposed to a multi-party system. There are pros and cons to each, okay? We could argue that. We're probably not going to do that today, but the fact of the matter is that our wagons, at least from an operational standpoint, are hitched to the Democratic Party. For you Green Party candidates out there, that's fine, but you don't have one member, not one member in Congress. Okay, so you have no political voice whatsoever. There are 55 Black Democrats in office. And while people have been busy in the street with the Black Lives Matter movement, what they have been failing to pay attention to is that the Congressional Black Caucus are the ones that are introducing the bills on our behalf, okay? The Advanced Civil Rights Act is one such bill, okay? The Advanced Civil Rights Act was introduced by a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. It has already passed the U.S. House of Representatives, okay? It is probably not likely to pass the Senate because the Senate is controlled by Republicans, okay? In the same way that the majority leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, from Kentucky, a welfare state and a former slave state, what the same thing that he did during Obama is the same thing that he's doing now to block Nancy Pelosi, who's the Speaker of the House, the head of the U.S. House of Representatives. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight today, to make sure that I highlight it, is that in all of our deliberations that we're having in our public meetings, that we're having on social media, that we're having in the streets, the thing that I see that disturbs me most is that we are hammering the very people that would help us to pass a reparations bill, okay? We are basically denigrating and vilifying the very people that would help us to pass a reparations bill, or at least in the present case, a study to develop reparations proposals. It makes no sense, okay? Our only team in the House of Representatives is the Congressional Black Caucus and the allies that they have developed by virtue of being there. We're at the highest number in our history of the number of representatives in the United States Congress. For those of you that are Republicans, there are only two, okay? Senator Tim, there's one senator and there's one representative. The representative is from Texas, He will most likely be retiring. If I'm not mistaken, I heard word that he was retiring at the end of this year. Senator Tim Scott, he believes in the Republican platform. He is not a member of the Congressional Black Caucus because the two platforms do not line up. Now, having said that, the Congressional Black Caucus was founded as a bipartisan organization. Very important for us to understand that, okay? If we live in a society in which the majority rules, let's say that again. We live in a society, at least politically, where the majority rules. And the last time I checked, 55 people is better than 2 people, or is a larger number than 2 people, okay? So if we want to play the numbers, the Democrats are the only place to go, not the independents. The independents, when the truth be told, the independents, they either vote Democratic, they vote Republican, or they vote both. Now, let's think about those that vote both. In effect, what they are doing, they are canceling out what they would potentially gain by putting Democrats, by helping to put Democrats and Republicans in the Congress. The Democrats will vote one way and the Republicans will turn around and vote the opposite of what the Democrats have voted. So those independents that vote for both parties, you are canceling out what you have any benefit that you may have gained by virtue, or that you are putting competing interests against one another. Now, for independents that vote democratically, well, you might as well be Democrats. And if you are an independent that votes for Republicans, you might as well be a Republican. Okay, this tendency to not want to be labeled does not change the fact that you vote strictly Democrat or that you vote strictly Republican.
Whew. Thank you for that clarification. Let me shout out Joel Jones, my diaper buddy from Dayton, Ohio. What's up, JoJo? Asan Powell, yes. She is ADOS DMV, and we as ADOS SoCal are partnering with her for this August 27th in the nation's capital. Oh yeah, we coming for that check. We are coming as the ADOS movement from all over the country. Yes, we don't give a damn about COVID. You know, if you do, you have to stay at home because we don't want that on our hands. But we are braving COVID the way we brave going to the grocery store, the way we brave going to the mall, the way we brave going to the beach over here in California. I've braved a couple of protests out here. What I do want to encourage you to do, if you do plan to attend, start taking your plant-based antiviral herbal supplements now. That's what I do. Marlon takes his vitamins. Start hydrating now. I put lime in my water, a touch of maple syrup, and chia seeds with cayenne pepper. Start cooking with garlic. Lots of garlic. I put garlic in everything, okay? These are the ways you stay well. Start working out. You have a few pounds you need to shed? Don't make your body a COVID playground. Get out here in this natural vitamin D called the sun. God gives us this and blesses us with it daily. So do these things now. Get your rest now. But please, if you have a stronger belief in the COVID than you do, your ability to build your immune. I'm not saying that you can't come down with COVID, even if you do all the right things. People tell me, I did all the right things. I self-quarantined. I did this, that, and the third. I still caught it. Okay. I'm just saying if that belief is super strong, you may want to sit this one out. But these numbers are going to continue to go up, and we are going to be in DC with ADOS DMV getting it in. We've got a super spectacular event staged At the same time as Al Sharpton, who's called for a national action network to support Black Lives Matter. Okay, we're in support of Black Lives Matter, but guess what? So do reparations. And like I said at the top of the show, oftentimes it's the case that folks want to deal with the effect of a George Floyd without talking about how we got to George Floyd. And all the reform that they've had did not prevent a George Floyd, did not prevent an Elijah McClain, did not prevent a Breonna Taylor, did not prevent an Ahmaud Arbery. I could go on and on and on, but that's a show for another time. I'm saying that we are there as ADOS DMV and ADOS SoCal to partner strong, East Coast, West Coast, coming together to co-opt that march and get the attention back on what will make all the difference. Because see, when you're poor, you become a target, family. When you are poor, you become a target. And it is no question that institutionalized systemic racism is how we got George Floyd. Don't get it mixed up. So we are going to be there to help white folks, blue folks, blurple folks, to understand in a major, spectacular way that God has birthed the vision through the DMV and SoCal, and we need all hands on deck for the soldiers, for those who are not afraid and are fearless in everything they do. Reach out to us. Go to ADOS DMV. They're promoting it. I've got some flyers on my page, but we're going to be pushing this hard every day. And I thank you, Asan, for taking time out of your day to be on the line. Thank you, John Pez II, for being on the line. That's ADOS Philly in the building. Eric Stevens. So are all white Democrats working for our people? Y'all starting already, huh? Okay, let's do this. They don't have to. They are self-interested, and we have, with the ADOS movement, we have learned to become self-interested, right? We have learned how to become. We have put the gate up, okay? And we are kicking everybody out. I mean, if you want to be an ally, you're welcome. But we will not apologize for making us a priority. I'm not suggesting that we be for them because they're for us. I'm saying we have to, as Marlon, I'm echoing his sentiment, we've got to deal with the hand we've been dealt. And I'm going to let him speak a little bit while I take a breath. I do see you, Joelle. LGBTQ is jumping in on it. Black Lives Matter, though, to their credit, had a 10-point bullet list of demands. Guess what was number one, family? Reparations. ADOS. We are here. Do you hear me? Number one on Fox News, their list of demands was reparations. So we want to work with folks who want to work on what we're working on, because we're working on that check. That check is how we close the egregious racial wealth gap. White folks share 100 trillion. We share 1 to 2 trillion. And 90% of us share about 700 billion. Oh no. When our ancestors' blood and bones are in this soil, no, we coming for that check. August 27th and 28th, mark your calendars. You got to be there. It is going to be epic. So with that said, thank you, Robert Owens, for joining the live. Okay, so anyway, back to the topic at hand. I want Marlon to talk about, and I love Yvette. Love you, Yvette. I do, but I've come to understand the numbers. Democratic down ballot is only helping Trump. I hate to say it. I know y'all gonna nail me to a cross. But I want you guys to get beyond your loyalists. You've got to stop drinking the Kool-Aid and understand real clear ADOS politics, because that's what we're on over on this channel. Marlon has been beating me over the head with the data, the numbers for about a year now, and teaching me real clear ADOS politics. And so I'm going to take a breath, a little sip of water, while he explains to you why Democratic down ballot, meaning skipping the president and the VP and letting the chips fall where the damn may, hurts us more than it helps us. Marlon?
Well, there's two positions on the Democratic down ballot. Some people use it to represent the presidential campaigns whereby the leading contender for president will help those of his party that are down ballot. Okay. Most Americans or voters will come out to vote during the presidential election. Okay. Now, for the contender, the contender who has the greatest appeal within the electorate, that person will pull those in his party, will gain from that when the voters go to the polls. Okay. Now there's another position, I guess, which is the ADOS position, is that yes, we will vote for Democrats, but we will skip the presidency. Okay. How is that any different than what we have done previously, other than skipping the president because the president does not support reparations? Okay. Here's what that does, and this is where your ability to be able to observe and to reason on your own and not be caught up in the emotional frenzy that is going on in the ADOS community. The president, we must realize, is the most powerful piece on the chessboard. Okay? Let me say that again. The president is the most powerful piece on the chessboard. And according to famed constitutional scholar Alan Dershowitz, the president, the United States president, is more powerful than a king. The United States president is more powerful than a king. Okay? The president can appoint, for instance, the Attorney General, who in this particular case is William Barr. And now he's supposed to be the head law enforcement official in the country. Okay? He is a public servant. He's supposed to be. But in actuality, he is Donald Trump's enabler. Okay? He works for Donald Trump. He doesn't work for the public. And what the Congress must do by majority vote, i.e. voting with others, the president can do by himself. I want to say that again. The president doesn't have to consult with anyone. Okay? The president can act by himself. And we saw examples of that when the president called out the National Guard, United States military, to clear peaceful protesters so that he could take a photo in front of a church with a Bible, which he had upside down, looking like a clown. He embarrassed his chief of the armed forces, who swear an oath to be non-political. He's pulling people along and using those people as props to fulfill his political agenda, and his wacko social agenda and economic agenda, but more than anything else, his political agenda. And so that's why this idea of a Democratic down ballot and skipping the presidency or filling in the name like ADOS, they don't even count those votes. Okay? The political process, those third-party candidates, number one, if you haven't in most of the states, you have to qualify to be put on the general election ballot. Okay, so if you don't qualify, if this name ADOS is not qualified in the majority of state, then it won't be on the ballot. You'll be wasting your time with these strategies that aren't well thought out. Okay, so we don't want to skip the most powerful piece on the ballot, and that is the president.
Let me take Eric Stevens says, thanks, Queen, for acknowledging my response. Thank you for being a co-host on the show. We appreciate your comments and your questions in the chat. Mr. Aldridge, I'm just thinking about how Obama was in office with full House control for 2 years and we ain't get anything. Is it because we didn't hold him accountable? How would we ensure it wouldn't happen again?
Who asked that question?
Eric Stevens.
Eric Stevens, that's my buddy right there. You are 100% correct, and I will provide an example. The Congressional Black Caucus went to the president and inquired about a jobs program for African Americans. Okay? And the president said something to the effect that a rising tide lifts all boats. He was looking out for the general public. And Maxine Waters, I recall reading an article in which she said that they wanted to press the president, but they needed permission from ADOS. And the permission was not there because Barack Obama was the beloved president. Okay, so you can't tack a beloved president. You will pay for it during your reelection. She was looking for permission from her constituents to press the president. That permission didn't come. Okay, so they weren't able to hold him accountable for that because the public did not permit it. Now, these are words coming from her mouth. This is what she said. This isn't what Marlon is saying. This is what Maxine Waters and other members of the Congressional Black Caucus said in an article, and I can't remember what newspaper it was in, probably the Washington Post or something like that. But this is the actual, to answer Eric's question, that's one of the reasons that we weren't able to hold Obama accountable.
Joel Jones says, the United States president is not more powerful than the British monarchy, nor the Pope and the Vatican. He comes there. This is only relevant in the U.S. The president cannot act alone unless he has majority rule.
He has majority rule. Once you're elected as president, you run the federal government, all of the agencies of the federal government. Now, there are supposed to be checks and balances, but in this particular case, those checks and balances fail. Okay? This is nothing that I am opining on this after the fact. There was an impeachment trial for Donald Trump, okay, initiated in the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives. Now, the trial actually took place in the Senate, which is controlled by Republicans who happen to be of the same party as Donald Trump. It was a kangaroo court, okay? The Republicans failed in their constitutional duty to provide a check and a balance on the president of the United States, okay? Now, you can argue, you're not really arguing with me. You're arguing with a constitutional scholar. This is what Alan Dershowitz said. This is not what Marlon said. This is what he said, okay? And as a matter of fact, he was one of the defending attorneys for the president of the United States during that kangaroo impeachment trial. Okay, so the system of checks and balances actually broke down. Okay, now to add to that, if we want to understand why the president is as powerful as he is, all we have to do is to look at what his federal agencies are doing under his direction. Okay, we just saw an example in which the president failed to act on information from his intelligence community in which the Russians were putting bounties on the heads of American soldiers. Okay, and many of you are running out there talking about, well, the president, he signed a crime bill, the Tim Scott, I think, crime bill, where they were letting federal prisoners out. Now, the federal prison population is only 10% of the penal population. Okay, what they failed to tell you in that is that his Department of so-called Justice were trying to get some of the people let out. There were about 3,000 or so that were let out under this new crime bill or prison reform bill. What they failed to tell you is that William Barr, the Attorney General, instructed his prosecutors to go back and argue that some of those people should be re-imprisoned. So he signs a bill with the one hand, right? And that's all he did was sign it. He didn't have any other choice because he did not have the votes or should I say, he would not have had the votes if he didn't sign it. The Congress would have been able to override his veto, and the bill went into effect anyway. A president will not sign a bill if he knows that it will be vetoed because it will make him look silly. Okay? So just by virtue of the fact that you sign a bill, at least in my mind, there's a little credit of that, but the people in the Congress are the ones who put forth bills. The president does not legislate. Let me say that again. The president does not introduce a bill. The president does not sit in committees in which the bills are negotiated. The president does not vote on the floor when a bill is offered on the floor. He doesn't do it in the House of Representatives. He doesn't do it in the Senate. Okay, he may have a bully pulpit in order to make suggestions, but Donald Trump is not a policy person. He is the most ignorant. He is the most unqualified. He was not even a former politician. He has no knowledge of politics. He has no knowledge of foreign affairs. He even has no knowledge of economics, and he majored in economics. This man is a complete and utter fool. You look at any professional organization, whether it be psychologists, whether it be economists, and they'll all tell you the same thing. Whether it be lawyers, the lawyers are looking for the impeachment of William Barr. These are ignorant fools who do not obey the Constitution, okay? The system of checks and balances have broken down because the president, the most powerful piece on the chessboard, ignores the Constitution. He took an oath to affirm and defend the Constitution. His oath was totally different than any other public officials. In reality, Donald Trump is the head law enforcement official. He is the head of state. This is the president. This is why he is viewed as being more powerful than a king. Under a king had to answer to the wealthy, the lords, the nobles. The king could only do so much. The nobles were the ones who supported the kings. That was his army. Those were his diplomats. Okay? So they had to be in agreement with the monarch. in order for the monarch to be able to have his will be fulfilled. Okay, the president, on the other hand, and we've seen this for those of us that watch the news, this man ignores everything that the Congress does. The system and checks and balances will not work if the president ignores them. Okay? The Congress is responsible for inquiries into the president's behavior. Well, what does Donald Trump do? He ignores at least the Democrats. He only invites the Republicans in to provide them information that he sees fit to provide. He ignores the Democrats, who by the Constitution have the right to inquire into his behavior. He ignores federalism, okay? Federalism is a system of shared governance among the federal government, the state government, and the local government. He ignores all of that, okay? So if you really understand the Constitution and our system of governance, then you will understand that this man is the most incompetent, he is the most immoral, the most depraved person that you could ever have in the position of the president. And whether we make it through this, and that's yet to be seen, okay? What he has done more than anything else is he has set the stage for a future president who's far more sophisticated than he is to come in and to dominate the federal government. Donald Trump is a forerunner to something that could be much worse than him. He's too ignorant to even understand the implications of what he's doing on foreign affairs, on economics, and these particular type of issues. Anyone who has any form of reasoning and understands the system in which we live in and are governed by would understand that this man has set a precedent that will put all future governments in peril should we not be on our P's and our Q's. That is a fact. There's no question about that. That is a fact.
And so, family, you really have to assess within yourself, is Democratic down ballot strategy, which is not a strategy for ADOS because we don't have the numbers, but is being, what's the word I'm looking for? You have to search whether or not you want to be right or you want to protect your interest. I get why we have, as the movement, called to skip the president and skip the VP because we aren't getting reparations nor a Black agenda in exchange for our vote. Are you willing to risk that kind of strategy? Can you live with yourself? If Trump gets in and you chose to not vote for the president or the VP, that's the question I had to ask myself. And that's the question you must ask yourself. I've seen this man now, and this is another question that kind of segues into what's next. I've seen him disparage Black Lives Mattering. He says that that is denigrating the country. I've seen him recently in, where are those monuments that he just had that speech in front of? What part of this country is that in?
I can't remember. I want to say
where are those monuments for all the slaveholders?
The presidents.
Yeah, the presidents. Oh, I can't think of the name of the city, but I saw segments of his speech.
Utah. I want to say Utah. I'm not sure.
No, that's where are the Indians in Dakota somewhere? I don't know. I have to look that up, family. Forgive me for not being able to remember. But I seen him disrespect and disparage all groups in the name of rallying. He doesn't care if he comes up into this Indian tribal space, right? disrespects and disregards that they've got gates up because they don't have enough hospitals to treat if the pandemic hits their people hard. This is no different to me than when the Europeans gave blankets full of smallpox to the Indians. Mount Rushmore, thank you.
Thank you, Mount Rushmore.
Thank you so much. That is Indian territory that, yet again, this government, I'm learning so much about their role in undermining all groups. All non-white groups can get that smoke from these white folks. Do you understand what I'm telling you? So here, Mount Rushmore, this was Indian territory before they, white men, the government, decided to take it back and give them $100 million. And now you've got the unmitigated gall because you want to hold your 4th of July rally there. You've got the unmitigated gall to disrespect these people even more. They won't even touch that money. That money has grown to probably $1 billion by now. They won't even touch that money because they want their land. And you think it is okay to go up there and arrest them for protesting that you and all your white constituents are out there without masks. Okay, when you know that this COVID is attacking the least of us, the poor, the people who can't afford good medical care and good supplements, good treatment, you know it's coming for those communities. And I saw him and all of his white counterparts not only sit up there in blatant disrespect, they arrested the Indians who were in protest because they're doing this during a pandemic without mask. So he gets up there and he talks about being pro-police, and in the same breath wants to give an all lives matter speech that his white constituents cheered to. It's an oxymoron, quite frankly. How in the world can you be pro-police who are executing not just ADOS, but Hispanics, Indians? I'm learning more and more about the atrocities against these people as well. You want to come in and execute all these different groups, but when we really need you to go out here and bring our children home from these pedophiles who are in our communities, because that's where they send them, you just look at a pedophile map of all the sex offenders that live around you, and you will be mortified and want to clutch onto your child. Well, that's what's happening with missing ADOS. Missing children are being sold into these sex trafficking rings. So you want to come to our communities, execute us while we're in our homes. You want to execute us for driving while Black, jogging while Black, sleeping in our homes while Black, watching sports while Black in our homes. You want for playing on the playground with a toy gun. You want to be able to execute us with impunity. But when we really have a need, our taxpayer dollars can't be used for you to come in there and give us the same protection in the same weighted measure. And Trump wants to sit up here in this particular Indian state, this is Indian territory rather, and you want to say in one breath how much you support your beloved police, and in the next breath how all lives matter. Make it make sense, family. So I just want you to really sit with yourself. You've got to understand that Democratic down ballot is not the strategy for people who are 13% in this country, who, oh, by the way, don't really show up to the polls to vote like the rest of the groups, okay? We don't have 100% of our electorate that goes to these polls. Let's just keep it a buck. So you've got to sit and say, does this make sense? And let me tell you how I got there. I thought about my beautiful daughter who was about to turn 16. And I looked at the antics of Trump at a time when George Floyd and Elijah McClain and Rayshard Brooks can be executed on camera and these mofos be able to bail. And I look at our nonviolent offenders like a Khalif Browder, who couldn't afford to bail for allegedly stealing a backpack that he did not steal. He spent 3.5 years on Rikers Island because his mother couldn't bail him out. 2 years after being out of prison, he commits suicide. Okay? So I think about my daughter when I say I'm going to hold my nose. I need you to understand that I don't care for Biden, who I deem the author of the 94 crime bill, nor whomever he chooses a VP. Guess who I care about? My beautiful daughter, Genesis. And I care that she has a fighting chance to make things different. And I care about this super PAC that we put together to make it happen in a real strategic way. So back to your question earlier, Eric Stevens, and welcome to the live, Eric Brown. I see you. He's an attorney, one of my solid brothers out of New York City who overcame COVID, and he's still recovering. We're keeping you lifted in our prayers, my brother. But back to what Eric Stevens said, and then I'll let Marlon jump in and take a breath, because y'all know I was born to talk. Oh, where'd I go? Okay. I'm trying here, y'all. This bar is so faint, I can barely see it. Okay, so we're back to Eric's remark. From a strategic standpoint, we know Trump is trash. He starts to laugh. So strategy for ADOS. Obama didn't support reparations, and Biden doesn't seem to as well. Will ADOS have the ability to knock on that door and demand our just due? And I'll let Marlon weigh in. But my answer to that is we don't have the numbers. We have no one other than a few people from the CBC who have even signed on for HR 40 to study reparations. Hence the Friends of ADOS PAC. Visit us at friendsofados.com and let's begin to aggregate dollars so that we can get candidates like Tamara Johnson Shealy, who is running for the U.S. Senate seat out of Georgia, elected the next election cycle. Because if she gets elected this election cycle, it will be by a wing and a prayer. Everyone pays for their politics, family. It is time for ADOS to do the same. So none of this works. None of them will speak full-chested about our reparations because we are 13%, we are outmoneyed, and we are outmanned. So that's the work, family, between now and 2022 midterms and between now and 2024, the next presidential race. We have to really coalesce around this idea of the PAC, friendsofados.com. Marlon, did you want to weigh in on what Eric Stevens just said about not getting anyone to... Well,
it's a numbers game. Right now we have 55 Black Democrats who are fighting on our behalf. Okay? Now, we live in a society where majority rules. That 55, now if we look at it from the total congressional level, and I'll include the 2 Republicans in there just so that we understand that right now I think we're currently 13.6% of the population, but we represent 10.6%, basically 11% of the U.S. Congress. Okay? That represents political power. That is the ability to block legislation or to advance legislation. Now, I want you to imagine, what if we could over leverage our representation in Congress For example, if we represent 13.6% of the population, what if we could take that 105 to 110, 109? That would then represent, at least in the House of Representatives, 25% of the votes. Okay, now with 25% of the votes and operating in a political climate where neither party has a large margin of votes over the other, 110 votes, if they vote as a block, has the ability to advance legislation or to bring it to a halt. Okay, what that means is that people will have to come to the table, both parties, Democrat and Republican, to renegotiate in order to get legislation passed. Okay, I'm going to make it more critical than that. Let's put this in a perspective in which, for example, let's say if things in our society went haywire and the decision was made to put fascist legislators in Congress whose sole purpose were to destroy the two-party system and to create a one-party system controlled by fascists. Okay? We see examples of this in places like North Korea, where they only have one party. I want you to imagine a one-party system dominated by fascists. Now, how would that bode for African Americans and other minorities? Okay? Our 55 votes, and if we get our way, 110 votes in the Congress would be able to halt any legislation which would put us in peril. Okay? Now, having said that, that's just the Congress. The president is also important. I want you to imagine as well a scenario for reparations. The only scenario I see is a scenario in which the Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, okay, and that the president is willing to use his bully pulpit to fight for reparations, okay? Now, the truth be told, Biden is open to reparations. He wanted to include Native Americans. He said that if we are going to get it, then Native Americans should also get it. Now, me personally, I don't have a problem with that as long as we get it. I don't care who gets it as long as we get it, okay? That's, regardless, whoever is seeking that is going to have to do two things. They're going to have to justify it, and then they're going to want to have to win public support. Right now, in the Americans' public, reparations is not highly supported. Okay, so people, us, ADOS, are making the argument, why do we need to study? Well, here's my question. Why does a layperson like you and I think we know better than a legislator who knows the political system, who's in the meetings, who's having the sessions and the strategy meetings, who has the attitudes, right, and the priorities of the American public? They're the ones with all of the think tanks. They're the ones with all of the polls. They have the best polls, okay? What makes us think, ADOS, who have very little political education and probably no legislative experience, what makes us think that we know more than our legislators know, who are doing the business every day? That makes no sense. Okay? If you're a doctor, you would not listen to a person trying to advise you on diagnosis from someone who is a non-doctor. It doesn't make any sense. So we have to start getting realistic and being practical, right? The best that we can do is to get our legislators in Congress to overrepresent our population in the Congress to win public support. Now, that does mean that we're going to have to get people in Congress that see us as a priority. Okay, but the truth of the matter is, in order to do that, there are going to be some congressional districts in which Black people only make up 30% of that district. What does that mean? That means that those potential Black legislators are going to have white support. And we fail to realize that, okay? Our 55 legislators represent 82 million people. 17 million of them are Black. Now, if you're good at math, I'm not going to go into the proportions and all of that, but I'm just going to get to the bottom line. They represent more white people than they do Black people. Let me use that word and emphasize it a little more. They represent the interest of their constituents. So if the majority of their constituents are white, then what makes us think that those representatives should only represent the interest of Black people? I can guarantee you this: they won't get reelected. Okay, we have to be realistic, and we have to change the battleground. Okay, we have to prep the battlefield. How do we prep the battlefield? We get our legislators elected and we overrepresent ourselves in the Congress. Now, having said that, there are other things that we are going to have to consider. That is going to be a hard battle. 55% of us ADOS folks live in the South. That's the electorate. Okay, I want you to think about how many Democratic presidents have won in the South. Okay, the South, traditionally Democratic, is now Republican. Let me say that again, because this is the part that we are missing in our debates, in our meetings, our general meetings, our special meetings, our video conference meetings. We are not giving an honest assessment of what is happening. We do not have a balanced view.
Voter suppression.
We are only getting the views from people who have or a singular focus, and that is reparations. What do we do in the meantime, especially when we do not have voter support? What do? Forget everything else? That doesn't make sense. We need to get out of this emotional stuff, and we need to use these God-given brains, and I guarantee you that when ADOS is provided with the correct information, those brains of ours know how to interpret that information. We are not a stupid people, okay? But it's very easy to be deceived when you're only getting one side of the picture, when you're only getting one perspective, and you're not getting the multitude of perspectives. You are going to come to the wrong conclusions, okay?
And hurt ADOS.
You're going to hurt us. You're not going to help us, okay? We do not have the numbers to be able to pull off what we want to pull off by ourselves. So what does that mean? Now, this is me saying this. This is going to go contrary to what some of the things that you guys are hearing. We have to form allies.
We must.
We have no other choice but to form allies. So it makes no sense to disparage the very people who would vote in your favor. That is ignorant to do that. Okay? And we don't need to put ourselves, we're already behind an 8 ball. Okay? We are going to have to outthink. We're going to have to out-hustle everyone else. we're going to have to be, you're talking about A game, we're going to have to be on an A game that you've never seen before.
Triple A.
Okay? So we need to quit listening to particular groups who only give you one side of the story. Okay? And one of the ways that you, the audience, can validate what is going on is to be observant as to what is happening right now. Okay? Right now, we're focused on police reform. Okay? Nobody's paid attention to the Advanced Voting Rights Act, okay, that was gutted by the conservative Supreme Court. Okay? What did that do? The 1965 Voting Rights Act had a provision in it that focused on 8 states and some other districts that were suppressing the votes of Black people. What that 1965 Voting Rights Act did, it said that if those particular 8 states, these were southern states, okay, what it said that if you want to change your election laws, policies, and procedures, you have to get clearance from the Department of Justice, okay? Article 4 and 5 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Go look it up. Don't take my word for it. Go look it up. The Supreme Court gutted that provision. I think it was in, don't get me on dates and names and stuff like that. I'm going to mess that stuff up. But it was recent. And what happened? You go down to Georgia and you see the Secretary of State who is in charge of elections. What does he do? He throws out ballots, throws people off the voting rolls. As soon as the United States Supreme Court made that ruling, those particular states, at least some of them, maybe all of them, as far as we know, went back to business as usual. They started suppressing your vote, and your vote is your power, okay? People don't understand that. In a country in which the majority rules, what does that mean? That means one of two parties will control the government, or they may share power, okay? The Democrats are in control. They are the majority in the House. The Republicans are the majority in the Senate. And then, of course, we have a Republican president, which you may not have discussed in your general meetings, your video conferences, and all of these other things that you guys are having, which I agree with, by the way. We need to do that. What you have not probably discussed is that the Republicans have dominated the federal government over the last 28 years. They've dominated the House of Representatives 70% of the time. That means that they have been the majority 70% of the time, okay, to the Democrats 30%. They have dominated the Senate 57% of the time, okay? Now, they've dominated the presidency 43% of the time, but for the most part, that's a little bit half and half. If we look at the next 30 years, then it's about half and half. Now, if we look at the times that the Republicans have controlled the full Congress and the presidency, that is 9 times to the Democrats 4. I'm trying to impress upon you that the Democrats, if we're looking out and we're looking at our society, politically, economically, culturally, socially, what have you, one would have to say, just based on reasoning, that the Republicans have made the determinations as to how our political system is structured or ran in that particular case, how the economy is ran. And I can tell you this because all of you know this. They put policies in place which do not check corporations, and the corporations will do the same thing that the politicians do. They will not police themselves. They've called on the police to police themselves. The police do not police themselves. I want you to think about this for yourself. For those of you that have children, let's use this as an excuse. If you did not police your children, or could you expect your children to police themselves? Not going to happen. Okay, so we should not expect the police to police themselves. We should not expect corporations to police themselves, because when you do, they're going to run amok. They're going to run over you. They're going to abuse the power that they have been given. Okay? Corporations and our economic system is one that, at least the current system that we have, economic system, capitalism, one of the cons of capitalism is the unequal distribution of wealth. Okay? All of us know that, and we don't have to be an economist to know that. We look at the news, and we're always talking about how the wealth gap is increasing. It's consistently increasing. As we sit here and have this conversation, okay, wealth is being redistributed.
Some more. And again.
Okay? While you are out trying to figure out how to make ends meet, these corporations
are enriching themselves.
They are enriching themselves in the stock market. They're buying cheap stock, which they know that will appreciate when the economy gets back to going. They are receiving monies, finance from the federal government as we speak. Quantitative easing has not stopped. It is going on as we speak. You got your little, what is it, $1,500 check?
$1,200
check.
Plus $5 if you had an independent child.
They are getting, and I think that stimulus bill was around $2 trillion or so. Well, what they didn't tell you is that embedded in that stimulus bill was an additional $6 trillion that is going to go to the corporations.
Not the small business owners.
We're talking about the big corporations, okay? They're the ones who have always benefited during recessions. While you and I suffer during a recession, they are buying up cheap stock.
They're getting the whole monopoly board.
Yes, the monopoly board. That's it. They're buying up cheap properties. Everything is a bargain basement sale. Okay, and that's how the wealth gap increases, and you and I are left to pick up the pieces after the economy goes back to the way it's operated before recessions.
Let me take a breath, Marlon, and shout out to John Pez, who says the topic is interesting. We talked about this today in our general meeting, voting down ballot. We have 4 hard months left to figure this out. Okay, well, I don't know what we're figuring because I'm going to transition to your next statement, John. And so what is Biden giving us for our vote? He doesn't have to give us anything. That's what we fail to realize. We're sitting up here insisting on voting as an exchange when we are outmanned and outmoneyed. We're on the menu. And what the Friends of ADOS PAC is designed to do is get us at that table. So Biden and the rest of the establishment Democrats feel like it's a gift to us to unseat Trump.
That's not true.
Well, the bottom line is that's my made-up story then. Okay? Unseating Trump has become the priority. And Biden has some lift every voice plan that doesn't lift ADOS, if that's what you're referencing, Marlon. The bottom line is they don't have to appeal to us because we are Democratic loyalists by and large. We show up to the polls and vote blue no matter who. We're still caught in this quagmire of a lesser than two evil strategy. because we're outmoneyed, we're outmanned, we're on the menu and not at the table. 13% of the population. And so until we believe in pouring money into our own politics for our own interest, they never have to offer us anything because they never do. What happens to reparations our Black agenda demand? If Biden wins, regardless of ADOS voting down ballot, what's the difference? He would still serve all the people. It's a rhetorical question. Okay, Marlon disagrees with me. I believe that they believe that unseating Trump is the priority, even though we didn't put Trump into office. It's become our Black vote that needs to be leveraged to unseat him. All the votes. But they want us to be grateful that Trump will be unseated if we get to the polls and the same record Obama-style numbers that we've shown up for in the past, and that getting Trump out of office is our gift. Marlon, you'd like to weigh in?
One of the things that I've seen in the ADOS community that disturbs me is that because we're only getting one perspective and we have these singular goals, reparations being everything or nothing else, is that it causes us to languish in despair. Okay? Languishing in despair will bring health problems. That will bring mental health problems. It will cause a cascading effect, okay, when you don't get all of the information, right? And when you put another thing that I've seen is that many of us take some of these things too serious. It's not that serious. Life has never been that serious. Even with all of the police brutality and the educational gaps, the wealth gaps, and all of that, we are a persevering people. We're going to make it regardless, okay? And so this despair that I'm seeing, it seems like it's more prevalent now. And one of the things that I think causes that is that we only get one side of the story, okay? Let me give you some other sides of the story. Politics, by and large, is also based on loyalty, okay? And one of the reasons that independents don't fare well is because they don't have a label. They're not loyal to either party. That's why Bernie Sanders didn't do well, okay? Now, yes, we vote Democratic. We do that for a reason. I'm talking about Black folks. It doesn't make any sense for us to think as individuals to think that we know more than the collective knows. We are democratic for a reason, okay? Now, what we fail to realize is because we don't get the full story is that the majority rules, and we ain't the majority, okay? That is the hand that we have been dealt. We are numerically inferior, which means that we can't be the majority, at least in terms of who runs the government, okay? The majority party runs the federal government. That happens at the state level and at the local level, okay? Now, there are some places where we are the majority, and we can legislate. One of the things that I see is that we're not being bold enough. We don't understand that the Constitution, whether it be the United States Constitution or the state constitutions, we don't understand that when we become politicians, we are invested with constitutional powers, okay? And one of the problems I see is that we never pick the Constitution up to see what those powers are, right? We never take it to its limits to see what it is that we can do. And we have the ability to do that, whether it be on a school board, a city council, or what have you. We just go along to get along. It's like we're just happy to be there. Okay, that hadn't always been the case. We've had some politicians that they didn't play Okay, I'm thinking about Maynard Jackson. The Atlanta International Airport is named after him. Okay, they didn't name that after him just to be naming it after a black person. He ran that city, and I can guarantee you black folks benefited from it. When that airport was built, he made sure that black contractors were involved in it. Well, what is it that they can do? He said, well, I'm sure they can pour the asphalt. And you know that an airport has a whole lot of asphalt. So they poured the damn asphalt. Okay? I'm thinking of, for our DC folks, Marion Barry. I don't think I have to tell you much about him. Marion Barry was no joke in DC. Crackhead and all, it didn't make a difference. Marion Barry was elected mayor or city council after spending time in jail doing crack cocaine. Okay? That means that the people love Marion Barry. And it wasn't because he was smoking crack cocaine and messing around with whores. Okay? It was because the people benefited by his policies, political and economic. Okay? We can go Harold Washington. We've had some people, black folks, that when you put them in that office, they know how to make sure that their constituents, ADOS, are taken care of. So this negative attitude that we seem to get, that our politicians aren't doing anything, that is disparaging in itself. That is despair, and that comes from a mindset of hanging around people who are negative. Okay, if you hang around negative people who are constantly disparaging other people, you are going to become negative. This is a fact. I'm telling you something that you already know. Okay, I'm telling you something that you already know. So when you're hearing things from people, make an observation as to what's going on. Go to the Congressional Black Caucus website. Talk to these black politicians to see what they're up to. Okay? Go to congress.gov and look at the legislation. It's all there. Okay? I would rather have 55 people that look like me in an institution that are able to go sit with the president and demand things and to hold him accountable. Okay? Joe Biden knows the score. He knows what he owes. Okay? And at this point, this is the probably the best opportunity that we've ever had in terms of having legislators in place. ADOS probably didn't know is that the third man in the House of Representatives, the third most powerful man in the House of Representatives, is a black man. We've never had that. We've never been in that position. Okay? We have about 5 members that are chairs of standing committees. We've never had that. We have 28 that are chairs of subcommittees. You know how black people are when we get around in a group, we're going to dominate. And I can guarantee you that the CBC members, any significant legislation which has been passed in the House, it was introduced by a black person. Go check it out. Prove me wrong. It was introduced by a black person. This is our time. Okay? White people don't understand this police brutality or whatever you want to call it. To me, it's political persecution. They don't understand that. Okay? So who do you call in? You call in someone who understands that. And that's going to be somebody that looks like you and me. Okay? We need to quit disparaging our own people, because in the main, what we're doing is the same thing that a white supremacist does. If I were to take some of the people that I'm meeting, and not all of us are like that, put them in a black box, and then put white supremacists in the black box, and then observe the statements that come out of the black box, I wouldn't be able to distinguish who it's coming from, the black person or the white supremacist. This is the type of negativity that I'm seeing among ADOS that is going to be to our detriment. Okay, have faith in your people. Have faith in humanity, number one. Of course, have faith in yourself, but have faith in our elected officials as well. If they don't do the job, then don't vote for them. Hold them accountable the next time around. Okay, let them do their job. They're operating with far more information than we are operating with. Okay, and they're operating in a system in which they are outnumbered. Remember that. They don't control the agenda in the House nor the Senate. Let us understand that.
I'm reading from the Washington Post. I need to stay here a minute because I need to come to the defense of ADOS and why we disparage our leaders. You want to talk about James Clyburn being the third most powerful man, black man, in the Democratic Party. I don't know if is he the whip? Is that what you said?
The whip.
Okay. Whip. This is the Washington Post on February 24th, 2020. First of all, James Clyburn proposed a race-neutral anti-poverty program a decade ago. That was that bull 30-20-10 that Bernie Sanders tried to pass off in lieu of reparations. Guess who 10% of whatever proceeds was coming out of that was for? ADOS. We were the 10%. Appalachians, I think, were the 30%. I'm not sure who the 20% was going to. But in James Clyburn, someone who looks like us, he was the one to come up with this 30-20-10 nonsense. Let me tell you what else about James Clyburn and why we have no confidence in many of the people in the CBC. House Majority Whip James E. Clyburn, whose district encompasses 8 of the state's poorest counties, has long opposed cash payments to African Americans whose ancestors were enslaved. He believes it would be too difficult to determine who deserves to be compensated. But a race-neutral anti-poverty program he conceived a decade ago is now catching fire among candidates for the Democratic nomination as a way to provide practical restitution for slavery. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because we are long overdue in terms of, I don't like to give you guys ear fatigue. We have so much more to talk about the next show, but I just need for you, Marlon, to understand why ADOS is not for these identity politics. We don't give a damn if you look like us and you're doing things to undermine what we are owed. We already talked about how egregious this racial wealth gap is. And for someone with as much power as James Clyburn has, first of all, to continually be elected when he's amongst the poorest of us, okay? And then he comes up with this 30-20-10 with us on the bottom and is not for cash payments and has not signed on to HR 40. Do not disparage the ADOS movement for not, feeling very hopeful as the legs of the table that everybody else eats from. We are on the bottom in every metric with 55 people that look like us in the CBC. So, yes, I encourage everyone to do your homework. But where we disagree is I don't need you to look like me. I need you to fully, from your chest, act on our behalf. So we're not on the bottom in unemployment and underemployment. We're not on the bottom in environmentally racist neighborhoods that we're redlined into. We're not on the bottom in being miseducated. We're not on the bottom in terms of being able to have any wealth to leave our children. We're not on the bottom when it comes to educating our children and giving them advanced degrees. We're not on the bottom when it comes to lending for homes and for jobs. I don't need you to look like me. I need you to fight as hard for me as I see AOC fighting for her own people. I don't need you to be bought and paid for by the establishment as a muzzle on your mouth. And this is why I need everyone to support the Friends of ADOS PAC at friendsofados.com, because I need us to be free to tell it like a TI is, and to go in there and be able to sound off on the floor like an AOC on behalf of the ADOS. That's what I need. I don't give a damn what you look like. I need my people not to be on the bottom. And that's why ADOS pushed back so hard, why we disparage them. Because we are on the bottom and we don't understand how we got here with so many people in office that look like us. Even if you were to come out in full support of the things, don't hurt us by no 30-20-10. Don't hurt us by being against caste reparations. Don't hurt us by not fully supporting the study of our reparations. This is why we are at odds with the people in government that look like us. Eric Brown, thank you for weighing in. The fortune is being made by those with disposable income and those able to access these federal loan programs and in turn invest the money into the market and not their business. No sufficient governmental oversight. You're absolutely right. He says, Eric Stevens says, I'm a subscriber now. I hope you mean the Friends of ADOS PAC at Facebook, friendsofados.com, my YouTube channel, my Facebook channel, Friends of ADOS TV. I encourage all of you to share this. I'm not into 4th of July anymore. I quit that this year. We're going to have an amazing meal just because I love to throw down and I love to eat well. But there will be no happy 4th of July greetings to the family the way I clown for Juneteenth. That is my new Independence Day that I'm learning to embrace and to celebrate with my people, ADOS. So I'm not going to bid you a happy 4th of July. I don't believe in it. It's a white person's holiday. I see it clearly now with the mishandling of everything since George Floyd. My eyes have been wide open. And so I'm not going to tell you that, but I will tell you to make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your Saturday. Let me pray us out first. We're going to come back the next show. We're going to talk about AOC and the Afro-Latinos. We're going to talk about chattel slavery all over the globe. You see, it wasn't just here. Although, let's be clear, the gate is up for ADOS in this country around our specific repair. We're going to talk next time about everybody's panties in a bunch over black on black crimes and murder, as if that's exclusive to us. I'm going to share with you about how other groups, when they were systemically etched out of the economic prosperity of the country, how they too murdered themselves. Hello, Irish. Okay? I'm going to make that case that just because we murder each other, that's not nice. We should not be murdering each other. But murdering each other and robbing from one another is not just a black thing. Maybe that's what I'll title it. But I need to help you guys understand that it doesn't exempt the police. I don't want my tax dollars to be used to execute us, ADOS, with impunity and have to have my taxes used for these huge settlements that are coming down the pike because they're able, by law, to execute us and ask questions later, bail out and walk. I don't want my tax dollars being used that way. Nobody weighed in with me as they expect us to weigh in with the public about reparations that are owed from a government who has imprisoned us in institutionalized systemic racism. Nobody asked my permission to use my tax dollars in this way. So we're going to talk about those things on the upcoming shows. Make sure you stay tuned. This is Real Clear ADOS Politics with Marlon Aldridge, CEO of the Friends of ADOS PAC. And with that said, family, let me pray you out, because you know I sleep better at night knowing that I've covered the ADOS, that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, ADOS and its allies, God truly is, because you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the living Spirit of God. So with that said, you make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your Saturday. Until next time, family, I love you black. I love you strong. Ciao for now.